Before we begin this incredible journey, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoy stories from Heartfelt Tales, please like and subscribe for more amazing content. Now, let's dive into this beautiful story. The rain hammered Seattle's downtown streets like nature's own percussion section, turning the evening commute into chaos. Victoria Kane pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders as she hurried down Pine Street, her 6-year-old daughter, Emma's small hand clutched firmly in hers. The storm had arrived without warning, catching the city off guard and leaving everyone scrambling for shelter. Victoria's heart pounded. With more than just the effort of walking quickly through the downpour, today had been the worst day of her life, and that was saying something considering the past 3 years had been filled with challenges that would have broken most people. This morning she had been called into her supervisor's office at the small accounting firm where she worked. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired. The words still echoed in her mind. Like a cruel song she couldn't stop humming, with her final paycheck barely covering 2 weeks of expenses. Victoria faced an impossible situation. The eviction notice taped to her apartment door this afternoon had been the final blow. 30 days to vacate, but with no job and no savings. She might as well have been given 30 minutes. Emma skipped beside her mother, seemingly unbothered by the storm. Her bright yellow rain boots splashed through puddles with the kind of joy only children could find in the midst of chaos. Her dark curls bounced beneath a hand-me-down hood, and her green eyes sparkled with curiosity about the world around her. Despite their current circumstances, "Mommy, where are we going?" Emma asked, voice barely audible above the sound of rain. Hitting pavement and car roofs, Victoria squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "We're going to find somewhere warm and dry, sweetheart. Maybe the library is still open." They had been walking for 20 minutes, moving from one potential shelter to another, only to find everything closed or full. Victoria's feet ached in her worn sneakers, and she could feel water seeping through the holes she had been meaning to get fixed for months. Her phone battery had died an hour ago, leaving them truly alone in the storm. As they rounded the corner onto 4th Avenue, Victoria's eyes landed on the massive glass tower that seemed to pierce the gray sky like a modern-day castle. Cross Industries, the sign read in elegant silver letters. Julian Cross, the tech billionaire whose company had revolutionized digital security, owned this building and half of downtown Seattle. Victoria had read about him in magazines while waiting, in grocery store lines. 32 years old, incredibly successful, and devastatingly handsome according to every society page that featured his photo. He was the kind of man who existed in a different universe from people like her, someone whose problems were solved with phone calls and whose biggest worry was probably which charity gala to attend next weekend. The building's lobby glowed with warm light, and Victoria could see a security guard sitting behind a marble desk reading a newspaper. It looked warm and dry, everything they desperately needed right now. "Mommy, can we go inside the castle?" Emma asked, pointing up at the towering structure. Victoria hesitated. They weren't supposed to be there, had no business being in such an expensive building. But Emma was shivering now, despite her brave smile, and Victoria's maternal instincts overrode her pride. "Just for a few minutes, baby," she said, pushing open the heavy glass door. The lobby was even more impressive from the inside, polished. Marble floors reflected soft lighting from crystal chandeliers, and abstract art pieces adorned the walls. The security guard looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from mild interest to concern as he took in their soaked appearance. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the guard asked, standing up from his desk. His name tag read Robert, and his kind eyes reminded Victoria of her own father. "We just need to get out of the storm for a moment," Victoria said quickly. "We won't cause any trouble?" Emma wandered toward a large fish tank built into one of the walls, her eyes wide with wonder at the colorful tropical fish swimming inside. "Look, Mommy, it's a yellow one with stripes, just like my boots." Before Victoria could respond, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and a man stepped into the lobby. Victoria's breath caught in her throat as she recognized him immediately. From those magazine photos, though seeing Julian Cross in person was an entirely different experience. He stood about 6 feet tall with dark hair. It looked perfectly styled despite the late hour. His charcoal gray suit was clearly expensive, tailored to fit his athletic frame perfectly. But it was his eyes that caught Victoria's attention, deep blue, like the ocean during a storm. Intelligent and intense, but not unkind. Julian had been about to leave for the evening when he noticed the security monitors showing a woman and child in the lobby. Something about the scene had made him pause, cancel his dinner plans with investors, and come down to see what was happening. "Robert, is everything okay down here?" Julian asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being in charge. "These folks just came in from the storm, Mr. Cross," Robert explained. "The little girl was getting pretty wet out there." Julian's eyes moved from the security guard to Victoria, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks despite being chilled to the bone. She was acutely aware of how she must look, hair plastered to her head, cheap clothes clinging damply to her body, probably resembling a drowned cat more than a competent adult. "I'm sorry," Victoria said quickly, moving toward Emma to collect her. "We were just trying to get out of the rain for a moment." "We'll leave now," Julian said, and something in his tone made Victoria freeze. He was studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through to all her secrets and struggles. Emma chose that moment to turn away from the fish tank and notice the new arrival. With the fearless curiosity that only children possess, she walked right up to Julian and tilted her head back to look at him. "Are you the king of this castle?" she asked seriously. Julian crouched down to Emma's level, bringing his face closer to hers. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first genuine emotion Victoria had seen from him. "I suppose I am, in a way. What's your name, princess?" "I'm Emma, and this is my mommy, Victoria," Emma said, pointing back at her mother. "We're having an adventure, but Mommy seems worried about something." "You worried about things too?" The innocent question seemed to catch Julian off guard. Victoria watched as something shifted in his expression, a crack appearing in what she assumed was his usual professional armor. "Sometimes I am," Julian admitted to Emma. "But meeting brave adventurers like you makes things seem less worrying." He stood and extended his hand to Victoria. "Julian Cross, and you are very welcome to stay until the storm passes." Victoria hesitated before accepting his handshake, very aware of how soft his hands were compared to her own work-roughened fingers. "Victoria Kane, thank you, but we don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Julian said firmly. "Robert, could you please bring our guests some hot coffee? And maybe some hot chocolate for the princess here?" As Robert hurried away, Julian gestured toward a seating area near the fish tank, where comfortable leather chairs were arranged around a low table. "Please, sit down. Both look like you could use a chance to warm up." Victoria wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain what little dignity she had left, but Emma was already settling into one of the chairs with a satisfied sigh. Her daughter had always been too trusting, too willing to see the good in people, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. "This is very kind of you," Victoria said, perching on the edge of a chair near Emma. "It's nothing," Julian replied, but his eyes never left Victoria's face. There was something about her that intrigued him, strength beneath the obvious vulnerability that spoke of battles fought and survived. As Robert returned with a tray of hot drinks, Victoria wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug and felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Emma sipped her hot chocolate and chattered happily about the fish tank, completely at ease in a way that made Victoria both proud and worried. Julian found himself captivated by this unexpected pair who had wandered into his carefully controlled world. The woman Victoria had an elegance that couldn't be disguised by wet clothes or obvious financial struggles. Her daughter was a ray of sunshine in human form, brightening the sterile lobby with her presence. "So what brings you out in weather like this?" Julian asked gently. Victoria's hand tightened on her coffee mug. She could lie, make up some story about being caught in the storm while running errands. But something about Julian's direct gaze made deception seem impossible. "We're looking for the library," she said finally. "Somewhere warm to spend a few hours." Julian sensed there was much more to the story, but he didn't push. Instead, he glanced at his watch and made a decision that would change all their lives forever. "The library's closed by now," he said. "Why don't you both stay here tonight? I have guest rooms upstairs, and the storm isn't supposed to clear until morning." Victoria's eyes widened. We couldn't possibly... ... You could and you should, Julian said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Emma needs somewhere safe and warm, and I have more space than I know what to do with, as if summoned by her name. Emma looked up from her hot chocolate with a milk mustache that made both adults smile. Are we having a sleepover in the castle, Mommy? She asked excitedly. Victoria looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Julian's sincere expression, and felt something inside her chest begin to crack open. Maybe, just maybe, the storm had brought them exactly where they needed to be. Just for tonight, she said quietly. Not knowing that this single decision would transform their lives in ways she could never imagine, Julian smiled, and Victoria felt her heart skip a beat. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the warmth of Cross Industries, three souls were about to embark on a journey that would teach them all about the power of love, trust, and second chances. The adventure was just beginning, and none of them would ever be the same. The morning sun streamed through floored-ceiling windows of the penthouse guest suite, casting golden light across marble floors that probably cost more than Victoria had earned in the past year. She stood at the window, watching Seattle wake up 30 floors below, still hardly believing where she had spent the night. Emma was curled up in the king-size bed behind her, looking tiny among the luxury linens, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. Victoria had barely slept, her mind racing with questions about Julian Cross and his unexpected kindness. Men like him didn't help women like her without wanting something in return. At least that had been her experience. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Victoria, it's Julian. I brought breakfast. She opened the door to find him holding a tray laden with fresh fruit, pastries, and steaming coffee. Gone was yesterday's business suit, replaced by dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his blue eyes even more striking. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had been running his hands through it, and Victoria felt an unwelcome flutter in her stomach. You didn't have to do this, she said, stepping aside to let him enter. I wanted to, Julian replied simply, setting the tray on a small table near the window. Did you sleep? Better than I have in months, Victoria admitted, then immediately wished she hadn't revealed so much. Julian's expression softened. I'm glad. Emma still sleeping? As if summoned by her name, Emma's sleepy voice drifted from the bed. Mommy, is the Castle King here? Julian chuckled, and the sound made Victoria's heart do strange things. Good morning, Princess Emma. Are you hungry? Emma sat up, her dark curls sticking up in every direction, and grinned at Julian with the kind of instant affection that made Victoria nervous. Her daughter had never known a father figure, and Victoria worried about Emma getting attached to someone who would inevitably disappear from their lives. I'm very hungry, Emma announced, scrambling out of bed and running to the table. Wow, this looks like a feast for a princess. Julian helped Emma into a chair, his movements gentle and natural with children in a way that surprised Victoria. Most successful businessmen she had encountered seemed uncomfortable around kids, treating them like unpredictable small adults. Julian. We should probably get going, Victoria said, though the words felt heavy in her mouth. We've imposed on your hospitality long enough. Actually, Julian said, pouring coffee for Victoria and juice for Emma, I have a proposition for you. Victoria tensed. Here it comes, she thought. The catch, the price for his kindness. Julian seemed to sense her wariness because he held up a hand. Nothing inappropriate, I promise. It's a job offer. A job offer? Victoria repeated, skeptical. My personal assistant quit last week to move to New York with her husband, Julian explained, settling into the chair across from her. I need someone. Organized, intelligent, and trustworthy. Someone who can handle confidential information and isn't impressed by money or status. Emma munched on a strawberry, following the conversation like a tennis match. You don't know anything about my qualifications? Victoria pointed out. I know you're raising a remarkable daughter on your own, which tells me you're capable of handling multiple responsibilities, Julian said. I know you have pride, which means you won't take advantage of the position. And I know you are an accounting clerk, which means you understand numbers and discretion. Victoria stared at him. How do you know about my job? Julian had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I may have done some research this morning. Basic background check. Nothing invasive. Clean credit until recently. Excellent employment. Record no criminal history. References describe you as reliable and honest. You investigated me? Victoria's voice was carefully controlled, but Julian could hear the hurt underneath. I investigated a potential employee, Julian corrected gently. Victoria, I'm offering you a legitimate job with legitimate pay. $60,000 a year, plus health insurance and housing. Victoria nearly choked on her coffee. Housing? There's an apartment on the 20th floor that comes with the position, Julian explained. 2 bedrooms fully furnished. It's meant for live-in staff, though the last assistant preferred to live elsewhere. Emma's head popped up from her plate. We get to stay in the castle, Mommy. Victoria looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Julian's sincere expression. It was too good to be true, which meant there had to be a catch. What exactly would my duties involve? She asked carefully. Managing my calendar, handling correspondence, coordinating meetings, some travel arrangements. Julian listed. Nothing you couldn't handle, and nothing that would keep you away from Emma for long hours. Why me? Victoria asked bluntly. You could hire anyone, someone with better credentials, more experience. Julian was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes studying her face. Because when I saw you in that lobby yesterday, soaked to the bone, but still making sure Emma was okay before worrying about yourself, I saw someone with integrity, someone real in a world full of people who want something from me. Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not, Julian agreed. But I'd like the chance to find out if I'm right. Miss Emma had finished eating and was now exploring the suite, her voice drifting from the bathroom, where she was apparently fascinated by the marble fixtures. Mommy, there's a bathtub big enough for a mermaid? Julian smiled at Emma's excitement, then turned serious again. Victoria, I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm offering you a job because I think you'd be good at it. What you do with the opportunity is up to you. Victoria wanted to say no. Every instinct told her that getting involved with Julian Cross, even professionally, was dangerous. He was too handsome, too kind, too everything she couldn't afford to want. But Emma's laughter from the next room reminded her that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. I'd want to review the employment contract, she said finally. Of course, Julian said, relief evident in his voice. I'll have legal draw something up today. I'd want a trial period. 30 days for both of us to decide if it's working. Agreed. Victoria took a deep breath. Then yes, I accept. Julian's smile was brilliant. Excellent. Should we go look? At the apartment? The apartment on the 20th floor was perfect, and that terrified Victoria. 2 bedrooms with large windows, a modern kitchen, hardwood floors throughout. Emma ran from room to room, claiming the smaller bedroom as her own, and immediately planning where her books would go. The lease is in your name, Julian explained, handing Victoria a set of keys. Rent is automatically deducted from your salary, but it's well below market rate. Victoria examined the keys, solid and warm in her palm. This is really happening. It's really happening, Julian confirmed. Welcome to Cross Industries, Victoria Kane. Over the following days, Victoria threw herself into her new role with determination. Julian hadn't been exaggerating about needing an assistant. His calendar was a maze of meetings, conference calls, and social obligations. His correspondence included everything from business proposals to charity requests to what appeared to be love letters from women, whose names Victoria recognized from gossip magazines. She found herself working closely with Julian, often spending hours in his office, going over schedules and priorities. He was demanding but fair, brilliant but not condescending, and had a habit of asking for her opinions on matters that previous bosses had never trusted her to understand. What do you think about the Portland expansion? Julian asked one afternoon. Looking up from a stack of reports, Victoria glanced up from her computer where she had been organizing his travel schedule. I think the market analysis shows promise, but the timeline seems aggressive, elaborate. The demographics support a tech security firm. The local government is offering attractive incentives, Victoria said, warming to the subject. But 6 months from proposal to opening seems rushed. You'd be better served taking 8 months to do it right than 6 months and having problems later. Julian leaned back in his chair, studying her. You've been reading the reports? It's hard not to when I'm scheduling meetings about them, Victoria replied. I hope you don't mind. I'm impressed. Most assistants wouldn't bother understanding the context of what they're scheduling. Victoria felt a flush of pride at his praise, followed immediately by a stab of warning. She was beginning to look forward to these conversations, to the way. Julian's face lit up when she offered insights, to the respect in his voice when he asked her opinion. Emma was thriving too. Julian had arranged for her to attend the prestigious Westfield Academy, where small class sizes and excellent teachers challenged her bright mind. Emma came home each day full of stories about her new friends and her favorite teacher, Mrs. Patterson. Came to see me at school today, Emma announced one evening as Victoria helped her with homework. Victoria's hand stilled on Emma's math worksheet. He did, Unhung. Mrs. Patterson wanted to meet him since he's the one paying for school, Emma said matter-of-factly. He brought me flowers and stayed for my art presentation. Victoria's heart clenched. Julian was becoming too involved in their lives, too important to Emma. When this job inevitably ended, Emma would be heartbroken. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria found herself standing at her apartment window, looking up at the penthouse floors where Julian lived. Light glowed from several windows, and she wondered what he did in the evenings, whether he was lonely in that massive space. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Julian. Working late tonight. Don't feel obligated to stay past 6. Victoria glanced at the clock. It was already 7:30. She had been so absorbed in organizing files that she hadn't noticed the time passing. She texted back, already home. Emma has a science project due tomorrow. Need any help? I was pretty good at science once upon a time. Victoria stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She should say no, maintain professional boundaries, keep him from getting more involved in their personal lives. Instead, she found herself typing, building a volcano, all help appreciated. 20 minutes later, Julian knocked on her door, carrying a bag from an art supply store and wearing jeans and a t-shirt that made him look younger. More approachable, more dangerous to her peace of mind. Reporting for volcano duty, he said. With a grin that made Victoria's knees weak, Emma squealed with delight and dragged Julian to the dining room table where her half finished. Volcano sat surrounded by construction paper, paint, and what appeared to be half the contents of their kitchen cabinets. We're making it erupt with baking soda and vinegar, Emma explained seriously. But Mommy says we have to wait until tomorrow to test it. Very wise, Julian agreed, settling into a chair beside Emma. The anticipation makes the eruption more exciting. For the next hour, Victoria watched Julian help Emma perfect her volcano. His expensive clothes forgotten as he got paint under his fingernails and construction paper scraps in his hair. He listened to Emma's chatter with genuine interest, asking questions about her research and praising her creativity. You're good with her? Victoria said. When Emma went to wash her hands, Julian looked up from where he was cleaning paintbrushes. She's an amazing kid. You should be proud. I am, Victoria said softly. But Julian, you don't have to do this. The school visits, helping with homework. I don't want Emma to get too attached. Something flickered in Julian's eyes. What about? You, Victoria? Are you getting too attached? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made Victoria's heart race. She was saved from answering by Emma's return, but Julian's gaze lingered on her face, searching for something she wasn't ready to give. Later, after Julian had left and Emma was asleep, Victoria sat in her living room, thinking about the evening. The way Julian had looked at her daughter with such tenderness. The way his hand had brushed hers when they both reached for the same paintbrush. The way her name sounded when he said it, like something precious. She was in trouble, and she knew. Despite all her walls and warnings, despite knowing better, Victoria Kane was falling for her boss. And the most terrifying part wasn't that she might get hurt. The most terrifying part was that she might not. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new reasons to maintain professional distance. New reminders of why women like her didn't end up with men like Julian Cross. But tonight, for just a few stolen hours, Victoria allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to be more than just his employee. To be someone he chose, not out of charity or convenience, but out of love. The thought should have terrified her instead. It filled her with a hope she hadn't felt in years. The threat arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of a perfectly manicured woman wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly salary. Charlotte Whitmore swept into Julian's office like she owned it, her platinum blonde hair arranged in an elegant chignon. Her ice blue eyes taking in every detail of the space before settling on Victoria with obvious disdain. "Julian, darling," Charlotte purred, air-kissing both of Julian's cheeks, despite his visible tension. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Victoria recognized her immediately from the society pages. Charlotte Whitmore, heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune, Julian's ex-fiancée from 2 years ago. Their breakup had been splashed across every gossip magazine in the country, though the reasons had remained mysteriously private. "Charlotte," Julian said carefully, his voice devoid of warmth. "This is unexpected." "I was in the neighborhood and thought we should talk," Charlotte said, settling into the chair across from Julian's desk with practiced grace. Her gaze flicked to Victoria, who was trying to look busy organizing files. "Privately." "Victoria is my assistant," Julian said firmly. "Anything you need to discuss can be said in front of her." Charlotte's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "How? Democratic of you. I suppose some conversations are better had between people of similar backgrounds." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her expression neutral. She had dealt with women like Charlotte before, people who viewed her as invisible, insignificant. It's not worth considering as a real person. "What do you want, Charlotte?" Julian asked bluntly. "Daddy's expanding into digital security," Charlotte said, examining her perfect manicure. "He's prepared to offer Cross Industries a very generous partnership. $50 million for a 30% stake in your company." Julian's expression didn't change, but Victoria noticed his hands tense on his desk. "Cross Industries isn't for sale." "Everything's for sale at the right price, darling," Charlotte laughed. "Besides, think of what we could accomplish together. Your brilliant mind, my family's resources, our combined social connections. We'd be unstoppable." The way she said "together" made Victoria's stomach clench. Charlotte wasn't just talking about business. "The answer is no," Julian said coldly. Charlotte's mask slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. "Julian, be reasonable. Daddy doesn't like to be refused, and frankly, your recent choices have been ... questionable." Her eyes moved meaningfully to Victoria, who felt exposed under that calculating gaze. "My choices are none of your concern," Julian replied, his voice carrying a warning. "Aren't they?" Charlotte stood gracefully, smoothing down her skirt. "Because I'd hate for certain information to become public. Information about your new employee's background, for instance." Victoria's blood turned to ice. Julian's expression went dangerous. "What are you talking about?" he asked quietly. "Oh, didn't you know?" Charlotte's smile was venomous. "Your precious assistant has quite the interesting history. Ask her about David Kane sometime. Ask her why she really needed this job so desperately." Victoria felt the room spinning around her. David Kane, her ex-husband, Emma's father. The man whose gambling addiction had destroyed their marriage and nearly destroyed their lives. The man whose debts had followed her even after their divorce, making it impossible to get credit, to find decent housing, to build any kind of stable life for Emma. "Get out," Julian said, his voice deadly calm. "Think about my offer, Julian," Charlotte said, heading for the door. "And think about what's best for everyone involved." After Charlotte left, the office fell into heavy silence. Victoria could feel Julian's eyes on her, but she couldn't bring herself to look at him. Her hands shook as she tried to continue typing, but the words blurred on her computer screen. "Victoria," Julian said gently. "I should get back to work," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Victoria, look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to meet his. The kindness she saw there almost broke her completely. "Tell me about David Kane," Julian said. Victoria's composure crumbled. "He was my husband, Emma's father. We divorced 3 years ago. And he had a gambling problem," Victoria said, the words coming out in a rush. credit cards, personal loans, money borrowed from dangerous people. When I finally left him, I thought I was free, but some of the debts were in both our names. Even after the divorce, creditors kept coming after me. Julian listened without judgment, his expression growing darker with each revelation. That's why you needed this job, he said. Why you were looking for somewhere to live. Victoria nodded, tears threatening to spill over. I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted a fresh start for Emma and me. You didn't deceive anyone. Julian said firmly, Your past doesn't define you, Victoria. What you've accomplished, how you've raised Emma, the woman you are now, that's what matters. Charlotte's right, though, Victoria said miserably. I'm not appropriate for this position. People will talk, wonder what someone like you is doing with someone like me. Julian stood and walked around his desk, stopping in front of her chair. Victoria, look at me. When she raised her eyes, he cupped her face gently in his hands. I don't care what Charlotte thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks, he said intensely. These past weeks, working with you, watching you with Emma, getting to know the incredible woman you are, it's been the best part of my life. Victoria's breath caught. Julian, ... I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I think I started falling the moment I saw you in that lobby, protecting your daughter from the storm. Nothing Charlotte or anyone else says will change. Before Victoria could respond, he leaned down and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, giving her a chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she instead reached up to tangle her fingers in his hair, it deepened into something that spoke of weeks of suppressed longing and growing affection. When they finally broke apart, Victoria was breathless. This is crazy, she whispered. Maybe, Julian agreed, resting his forehead against hers, but it's also real. We're real. That evening, Julian picked up Emma from school and brought her to his penthouse for dinner. Victoria had protested that it wasn't necessary, but Julian insisted he wanted to cook for them. The sight of the powerful businessman wearing an apron and trying to flip pancakes while Emma coached him from a stool beside the stove made Victoria's heart ache with longing. Julian's really nice, isn't he, Mommy? Emma said as they sat around. Julian's kitchen island, eating slightly lopsided but delicious pancakes. Yes, sweetheart, he is, Victoria agreed, meeting Julian's warm gaze across the table. Do you think he could be my daddy? Emma asked, with the innocent directness only. Children possessed. Victoria nearly choked on her orange juice. Julian reached over and gently patted her back, his touch sending warmth through her entire body. What made you think about that, Princess? Julian asked Emma seriously. Well, Tommy at school says daddies are supposed to help with homework and come to school events and make their families feel safe, Emma explained. You do all those things? Julian glanced at Victoria, who was staring at her plate with burning cheeks. Would you like me to be your daddy, Emma? Julian asked gently. Emma nodded enthusiastically. But only if Mommy wants you to. She has to be happy too. Julian reached across the table and took Victoria's hand. What do you say, Mommy? Think you could be happy with me? Victoria looked at this man who had appeared in their lives like a miracle, who had given them safety and stability and was now offering them love. She thought about Charlotte's threats, about the differences in their backgrounds, about all the reasons this shouldn't work. Then she looked at Emma's hopeful face, and Julian's loving eyes, and none of those reasons seemed to matter anymore. Yes, she whispered. I think I could be very happy. The next few days passed in a blur of happiness tinged with worry. Charlotte had been suspiciously quiet, which made Victoria nervous. She knew women like Charlotte didn't give up easily, especially when they were used to getting everything they wanted. Her fears proved justified when Emma came home from school on Friday afternoon in tears. Mommy, some lady came to my school today, Emma sobbed, clinging to Victoria's legs. She asked Mrs. Patterson lots of questions about us and about Julian. Mrs. Patterson looked upset. Victoria's blood ran cold. She immediately called Julian, who arrived at their apartment within minutes, his expression thunderous when he saw Emma's tear-stained face. She's investigating us, Victoria said quietly, while Emma played in her room, recovered now but still shaken. I'm probably trying to find something she can use against you. Let her investigate, Julian said grimly. She won't find anything because there's nothing to find. You're an excellent mother, a hard worker, and the woman I love." "Julian, maybe we should slow down," Victoria said reluctantly. "If being with me is going to hurt your business—" "Stop," Julian said firmly, pulling her into his arms. "Victoria, I built this company from nothing. I've survived hostile takeovers, economic downturns, and every challenge the business world could throw at me. I'm not going to let Charlotte Whitmore intimidate me into giving up the best thing that's ever happened to me." That weekend, Julian surprised Victoria by taking her and Emma to a small coastal town 2 hours north of Seattle. They stayed in a charming bed and breakfast, walked on the beach, and acted like the family they were becoming. Victoria watched Julian build sandcastles with Emma and felt her last walls crumble completely. "I love you," she told him that night, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, while Emma searched for shells. "I love you too," Julian replied, pulling her closer. "Marry me, Victoria." Victoria's heart stopped. "What?" "Marry me," Julian repeated, turning to face her fully. "I know it's fast. I know we have obstacles to overcome, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You and Emma, you're my family now." Before Victoria could answer, Emma came running over with a handful of shells. "Look what I found," she exclaimed, then noticed their serious expressions. "Are you talking about grown-up things?" "Actually, we're talking about you," Julian said, lifting Emma onto his lap. "How would you feel if I married your mommy?" Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You'd really be my daddy then?" "Really," Julian confirmed. Emma threw her arms around Julian's neck, then reached for Victoria, pulling them all into a three-way hug that felt like coming home. "That a yes?" Julian asked Victoria over Emma's head. Victoria looked at this man who had given them everything: safety, love, a future she had never dared to dream of. Charlotte could threaten all she wanted. The past could try to drag them down. But nothing could diminish the love she felt for Julian, or the love she saw reflected in his eyes. "Yes," she said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, it's a yes." 6 months later, Victoria stood in the garden of Julian's estate, wearing a simple but elegant white dress, surrounded by friends who had become family. Emma walked down the aisle as flower girl, beaming with pride in her yellow dress, scattering rose petals with theatrical flair. Charlotte had tried everything to stop the wedding, spreading rumors, tempting corporate sabotage, even hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on Victoria's past, but Julian had weathered every storm, protecting his family with fierce determination while building an even stronger company. As Victoria walked toward Julian, seeing the love and wonder in his eyes, she thought about that stormy night when she had stumbled into his building seeking shelter. She had been running from one life and unknowingly running toward another. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, but Victoria barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at Julian, at Emma standing beside them as maid of honor at the life. They were about to officially begin together when Julian slipped the ring onto her finger. Victoria felt the last of her fears fade away. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. "You may kiss the bride," the minister announced as Julian's lips met hers. Victoria heard Emma's delighted giggle, felt the warmth of the afternoon sun, and knew that sometimes, just sometimes, storms led you exactly where you needed to be. The woman who had once had nothing now had everything that mattered: love, family, and a future bright with endless possibilities. And it all began with a billionaire who saw past her circumstances to the woman underneath, who chose love over convenience, who proved that some things really were worth fighting for. Their love story was just beginning. Victoria couldn't wait to see what adventures lay ahead for the Cross family. The girl who had lost everything had found something far more valuable than she had ever imagined. She had found home.